This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to a bonus edition of The Exchange this week. We have got a great show, and trust me, we have got the discussion points to talk about this week. It is all politics during this particular episode, and what a pleasure it is to be joined by the 40th Treasurer of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow. And we've just learned recently this week what a great story this is. The youngest delegate of the nearly 4,000 headed to Chicago for the Democratic National Convention in August comes right here from Warren G. Harding's hometown, and of course Mary Ellen Withrow's hometown.
Yes.
Christian Pearson. Now, how about that for a story? I think that's a fantastic story, and I've been telling people about that all week. I think it's just amazing. And of course, we've got Matt Morgan here, who's here each and every week. Christian, I wanted to ask very quickly, by the way, you cannot know this watching this, but it is so hot in this room right now. It is warm. I think the air conditioning's out in this building right now, but we're all surviving through this to give you an episode of this program. So I hope wherever you are watching this, it's cooler than where we are now because it's a little warm in the room. But Christian, quickly, just to kind of recap this, how did you become a delegate for this big convention? And in a high school student, you're just coming up on a senior in high school, right?
Yes.
The youngest delegate.
Well, back in, when I was 17 in January, I signed up to run for this. You know, I thought it would be a cool experience. I didn't quite understand the gravity of it until I actually won. But, you know, I knew it would be predominantly, older people, because that's who, is involved in, rural parties, and it's the 4th district. It's a lot of very rural areas. I just wrote a speech about being a young person and what it means to be a Democrat and how this is such an important election. How I felt compelled because it'll be the first one that, I'll be able to vote in. So I gave a speech. It must have been a pretty good speech because I got the only standing ovation.
You got really?
Yeah.
What did you say in this speech?
I was just talking about how politics was really interesting to me. I recounted my first experience canvassing for Hillary Clinton when I was 10 with my.
When you were 10?
Yes, she took me out with her I think the Sunday before the election. But I spoke of that. I spoke of the importance of young people and what the Democrats need to do to kind of cater to them, because there's going to be a lot more young people kind of coming out in this election for the first time, as it's so important. And we need a different voice. The convention will be full of older people from from the big coastal cities. They need some people like us, and they need some young people there. So I was one of several. I think we're going to have at least a dozen young Democrats from Ohio going to the convention. There's some other. He's about 7 months older than me, who's going from Muskingum County. So we have a really good lineup of young people from Ohio.
How does it feel to be the youngest delegate? From what is no longer, this is the whole 50 states, the whole kit and caboodle here, and you're coming from what is considered at this point no longer a swing state, the hometown of Warren G. Harding. We have only had 46 presidents, and this is where a Republican president came from. I think there's an irony to this in a way.
I know. It's more of now that I am from J.D. Vance's state, in that,
that's right. There's that.
Yeah.
He's a politician who just knows nothing about he had no experience. You can argue a lot of local politicians here, they've sort of jumped off of that. They win just because they're Republicans. They have no experience. That is J.D. Vance, and we know who he is. The country doesn't. So hopefully I'll be able to help educate the country on who J.D. Vance is.
I never thought about this, really, and I don't want to beat this drum too heavy, but it's very interesting. You're the youngest Democrat, or youngest delegate in the country going to the Democratic Convention. Now, this is the first time in 80 years Ohio has had a vice presidential candidate. It is J.D. Vance from Ohio, which we all think will vote Republican. There's not even a lot of campaigning going on here for president. Also, the hometown of Warren Harding, which I just said a second ago, but also, you're in the district of Jim Jordan, right?
Yes.
You talk about Republican territory.
It's just kind of knowing what you believe in, and I know that's.
How do you feel about Jim Jordan, by the way?
I am not a fan of his.
I didn't think you were, but I thought we'd lay it out there.
He's like Trump. He's in it for himself. I haven't really, with local officials. I would say a congressman's a local official. You don't see anything from him, but to be a Democrat in an area like this, you have to know what you think. You think is right and what you stand for, and that's what a lot of young people struggle with. And young people are just so impressionable. So, a powerful force like Trump, if he says something bold, a lot of young people are going to go with that, unfortunately. So it's sort of our job as young Democrats to sort of educate, or other people our age, with what a second Trump presidency will do, especially, with especially with the judiciary. That's my big one, not Project 2025, but how his Trump federal judiciary will enable Project 2025. I think things like that are really important, that we have to do a better job of explaining to young people.
Mary Ellen, with the deterioration locally of Democrats in power, with the Jim Jordans in power here, with the J.D. Vances becoming the vice presidential nominee in the city, hometown of Warren Harding, how does this make you feel as a lifelong Democrat who has succeeded so extremely well to see this happen in Marion, Ohio?
I think it's remarkable, and I think he's going to go far. I want you to know the first time I ran for the to be a delegate, I didn't win.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. A union person beat me, and yeah, it was, I got beat. So he won his first one. I would have liked to have heard his speech.
Well, hopefully someday you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mary, well, what is it like to be a delegate? What is Christian in store for?
Oh, he gets to be give his opinion on things. That's they ask for your opinion on this and that, and it's a good position to be in, and especially at his age.
Which which convention do you remember the most as a delegate?
Probably my first one with Carter.
I know there's a famous picture of you and John Glenn on the floor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now that was
was not Carter.
Was that Clinton?
Probably no. It wasn't Clinton. I think it was probably maybe Mondale. Yeah. We had Mondale and McGovern, and in between there, and we tried hard, but it didn't happen. Yeah.
And I should mention, just because I've been mentioning the former Democratic presidents, Jimmy Carter is still with us, but obviously at 99 and in hospice. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be doing anything, but you never know. You never know. They might have a video. Who knows?
They're not asking him anything.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they never do, hardly.
They never have.
No.
No matter his age or stage.
They should ask him. Yeah.
I mean, you, Mary Ellen, you've been around ever since his presidency. Mm-hmm. They always leave Jimmy Carter off.
They do.
What is that about?
I don't know.
It's very strange.
It's not nice.
No.
I would have to contend, originally it was sort of shell shock, he lost so badly, and, the end of his administration wasn't necessarily a bright spot for Democrats. But, I think his post-presidency, he's taken a career that's totally, absolved from politics. So, I would assume now when people think of, former Democratic politicians, Jimmy Carter's not one that comes to mind.
Well, what they say, though, about Jimmy Carter, and certainly in his heyday, which I think was actually after his presidency, is they said he was the greatest former president there has ever been. He won the Nobel Peace Prize, did all that work for Habitat for Humanity, was out there pounding the stakes himself. I mean, I think he became a very popular person.
He did, yeah. And it was for different reasons that they ignored him, but they shouldn't have. You
know what's interesting is we were switching between the last episode and this. I got to thinking, because we had a discussion, I'm going to get Matt in here in just a second, but we had this discussion about should Hillary Clinton be campaigning for Kamala because she was the first woman. And then I got to thinking about Al Gore, with the environment being such a big thing. Should Al Gore be out there? Now, I would suggest that they should. I mean, these are people who've run for president, and I guess maybe Jimmy Carter sparked that in my mind. Certainly Jimmy Carter's not being almost a century old at this point, but I don't know why, in a year with abortion, you wouldn't want to have Hillary Clinton out there. Now, I understand she's divisive to a lot of people, but this is a former Secretary of State. This is a former First Lady. This is a former Senator from New York. This is the first woman to ever get the nomination from either party to be the first woman, and certainly somebody who's been on the forefront of the abortion issue for many years. I think she is the person to be out there for Kamala, or certainly one of the people, and Al Gore, if he wanted to be in this, he did get involved in the 2016 campaign. I mean, boy, what is it the Bushes called him? Father Bush called him Mr. Oh, it was some Ozone. Mr. Ozone, I think is what it was.
Ozone Man.
Ozone Man.
Oh.
So, I mean, hey, maybe it's time to come back and say, I told you so.
Well, I think a lot of people think, or at least younger people, at least on the internet, seem to believe that Al Gore should have been the president. That
I think Mary Ellen thinks
Oh,
that.
I
think Mary
I
Ellen.
still believe that. Yeah.
For not the Supreme Court.
for not Sandra Day O'Connor.
That's never talked about enough. I'm glad you brought that up, because Sandra Day O'Connor, Republican, appointed by Ronald Reagan, first woman ever appointed to the Supreme Court. Later in her life, she recently died, this past year I believe it was, but she said the only decision she ever regretted was to stop the vote count in 2020.
Which there is no guarantee that finishing the recount in Florida would have given a Gore victory, but I mean, it's just hard to believe that it wouldn't have changed something.
Yeah.
And so I think, for that reason, a lot of people view Gore as, the legitimate president. That you have to be careful with that in, light of, Trump's attacks on, the legitimacy of elections. But a lot of people view Al Gore with sort of a godlike status. I would be one among them. So that would be, get at least some young people out there, because they view him very, very fondly.
So Al Gore gets that, but Hillary Clinton doesn't. That's interesting.
Well, I think the women are all for Hillary.
I would think that there's a group of people. I think Hillary Clinton comes to any town, people are going to show up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she just, whether you hate her or love her or whatever it is, she's just been a part of so many big things. She is a headline name. I believe, again, whether you like her or dislike her, she's the closest thing to Eleanor Roosevelt in the First Lady department.
Probably. Yes. Let's talk about Eleanor.
Well,
she was one of my favorites.
People loved, and I think, has any other First Lady ever held public office other than Hillary Clinton?
No.
I think people have forgotten that now that she was First Lady, because her career after that was so stark. So I don't know. And I'll tell you, Bill Clinton is a darn good campaigner, and if people have forgotten that, that's a major mistake in the Democratic Party if they don't send him out.
She was appointed, though. She wasn't elected.
Well, she was elected. She was sworn in as a Senate. Now, the circumstances surrounding her moving to New York suddenly, then becoming...
But she did win that against de Blasio, wasn't it?
It was Rick Fazio, some former congressman.
Yeah, so she did win that election.
She won, but she won with significantly less votes than a Democrat typically did in New York at the time. But she was sworn in as a senator by Al Gore while her husband was still president. I think that's pretty.
Her and her husband weren't seeing eye to eye at that time.
No,
I think there was an issue going on there. But in any event, Mary Ellen, wouldn't you have Hillary out there? Wouldn't you have Gore? Certainly,
Yes.
Wouldn't you have Bill Clinton?
Well, I think you should. He was a good speaker.
Yeah,
I like to hear Bill Clinton speak.
Bill Clinton, it's weird how he's been pushed back. Now, maybe it is the Me Too thing, and maybe it is...
Yeah, they've held that against him.
And maybe it is, but boy, I would think now, nearly 30 years have passed since that happened, and at this point, I certainly don't think it could hurt in places like Arkansas and Ohio, and places that he was very popular in.
Yeah.
I certainly would not sit Bill Clinton at home.
No, I would not. And I think, as I listen to you more about Hillary Clinton, the more I'm inclined to agree. But for just, a lot of Democrats, that's going to evoke, just a strong negative memory of all that could have been, but she just failed to deliver upon.
I'm going to get Matt in here right after this, but the thing about Hillary Clinton that's interesting, and I don't know if Mary Ellen would agree because she knows Hillary. When Hillary's running for an office, people hate her. But when she's campaigning or in an office, people love her. Did you always find that to be the truth, Mary Ellen?
That's true.
I don't know what it was.
Well, that's true with a lot of people, though.
But for her, it seemed when she was Secretary of State, they loved her. When she was First Lady, she was not disliked at the end. They liked her, I think, more than they liked her husband at the end of his presidency. When she was Senator, it was during 9/11. They liked her.
Well, yeah, she worked hard at those jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when she runs for something, as you say, she doesn't win by the margins. She did lose the primary to Obama for president. She did lose the Maine to Trump in the election. It just when she runs but as a campaigner, I think, boy, she's the person I don't know how you can leave her out of history at this point. I don't think you can just say stay home.
She still got 3 million more votes than
And
Trump
there's that.
did.
And there's that.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly think if you bring Joe Biden out at this point, you've got to bring Hillary Clinton out.
I would say they will each have, that there will be targeted campaign events that I'm sure will suit each of them. That will bring out their strengths and put them in front of the most supportive crowds. That'll still, rally up support for the vice president.
Now, Matt, 20 years old, we'll let you speak now. How do you feel about all this?
Well, I think that it would certainly be a good idea for the Democrats to have Hillary Clinton campaign for them. I think more campaigning is always better than less campaigning. I think that there will be people who don't like Hillary Clinton, but I think that those people will probably be, they'll probably look at the Hillary Clinton endorsing Kamala but I don't think that'll be negative so much because there's everybody else who is also endorsing her.
You know what? I just feel that Hillary Clinton will be a major factor here because she is still the most well-known woman in the Democratic Party. She still is the woman who's went the furthest in the Democratic Party until and unless Kamala wins this election. And she always will be the first. I mean, to me, that would be, as if you were African American and you tell Barack Obama to sit at home. I mean, why would you set the first at home? I just don't understand the logic of that.
I would contend that, first of all, Obama won his elections with great majorities in both, and even when he ran for his Senate seat, he won 70-30. But I think it's hard for some reason. Hillary Clinton is this horribly divisive figure, and I don't understand it.
But don't you believe that Obama has become to certain people as well? I mean, my goodness, a lot of people feel we got Donald Trump because of Obama and the whole birther issue.
Well, that was
Yes.
that birther issue. Yeah.
But there's, Obama has such a soft spot in a lot of people's heart, in a lot of Democrats' hearts, and so does Michelle Obama. But I don't feel like Hillary Clinton has that same. Now, to a majority, yes, but not.
I don't know, Matt.
Not as many.
What do you think? Hillary Clinton, popular, divisive. What is she?
She's certainly divisive, but I personally do know lots of people who like Hillary, and they voted for Hillary in 2016, and
Cried when she lost. I mean, did anybody have those pictures of the Javits Center? People crying. I mean,
And the crowds all over the world, women mostly, wearing the cat ears and everything.
well, how about people forget the protests when she didn't win that happened days later?
Well, that's what I'm talking
I know,
about.
right? That's what. Yeah, but and also, by the way, I keep seeing all this. I'm with her, Kamala Harris, being spread around on social media. Well, who was that the original slogan for? That was Hillary Clinton. I mean, seems like they're recycling a lot of the Hillary Clinton stuff for Kamala. I don't know. I just think Hillary Clinton at that time had other problems. I think she had an email thing. I think she had a Comey issue. I don't think Kamala will run into those.
Let me interrupt you. I think the issue of James Comey reopening the investigation the month before that election was an act of election interference in and of itself. I don't like, that's just not precedented. I mean, like, if you go back, other people in law enforcement would tell you that's not something you should have done. He was overtly political in that press conference when you're the FBI director. I just think that was a great precursor of what was to come under Trump, who fired him, ironically, when, he kind of handed him the presidency.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because I actually want to get to the topic at hand, but doesn't, to some degree, when you are well known in politics, don't you become divisive to some groups regardless of how much you win by or what you do? As we've talked about, Bill Clinton, a hugely popular president, won by bigger margins than Obama won his elections, beat a sitting president who was very popular after Desert Storm, Bush #1, and yet, because of the Lewinsky thing, he's divisive. Hillary, for whatever reason, she's divisive. Obama, a lot of people say he gave us Trump, the whole birther issue. That's when Donald Trump got the national platform. And people have said in documentaries that Trump decided he was going to run the night that Obama made fun of him at the correspondence dinner. So Obama's divisive to certain people. Michelle, we've seen horrible things said about her. She's divisive to certain people. Biden, clearly, he just had to get out of the election. He's divisive to certain people. I think they've all got divisive points to them, but they've also got a lot of people who love them, or they wouldn't be as well known as they are.
You know what? I read Comey's book, and the fact that his wife and I think his daughter were both Hillary people, to me, for him to do what he did, I just couldn't believe it.
It's shocking. I am not even sure that he did it purposely.
Of course he did. How else would you do it?
You think that he tried to stop her from being elected?
I think he felt he had to do it.
Could be. I think, I don't know. I don't know what was in the man's head. I think he thought that if he didn't say anything and she won, which is what it looked like was going to happen, that if there was something there, that they would all come back to him and say, "What, you didn't tell us about this? What?"
Yes, but it was right before the election, and that's what was so wrong about it.
It was. I think he was in a weird position. I think that his name was Anthony Weiner. I think that Anthony Weiner was a big problem to begin with. I think he just should have.
Yeah, but then he wasn't. I mean, they found out none of that was.
It was none. But,
no.
But it was 2 days before the election at that point, and here we went. But Matt, do you agree that all well-known people are eventually going to become divisive, no matter what they do?
Well, nobody's liked by everybody, so yeah.
Except me. And Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen.
No, I'm afraid not.
No, but I think that that's an interesting thing, because people do. I have heard so many people say that Obama is great, but I've also heard an equal number of people who can't stand him. Now, maybe, that's an interesting thing to me. I think. Yeah.
The more influential you are, you will have people who love you and support you, but at the same time, you're going to have people who just prey on your downfall. It's it's bound to happen when you're influential, when you're well known.
I think you walk Obama into a Republican state, that's going to play horribly, just as if you did with Hillary, just as if you would with Biden. The one now who I don't know, and I'm interested to see, and maybe I'll be wrong about this, I think the toughest sell right now is going to be Biden at these campaign events. Because I think a lot of people feel that he was too old for the job, and I certainly don't think Sherrod Brown's going to invite him to campaign events. I certainly don't think any of these people who told him to get out is going to invite him to campaign events. I think they'll invite Kamala. I don't think they'll invite him.
I think you're going to have a lot of people who want, because at the end of the day, I watched basically all of his major public appearances after that debate. When you got him in front of people, he came alive. Sure, he would trip over his words some, but he was still a pretty good public speaker who could do a good job of rallying his supporters. So I think in the right environment, that wouldn't be that wouldn't be a terrible thing to have happen.
Mary Ellen, I remember in 2016 that there was this big push by the Democrats and Hillary Clinton at the top at that point to get Republicans who were very well known, who did not like Trump, to say they either were not going to vote for Trump or that they were going to vote Democrat. George H.W. Bush, we found out, voted Democrat. He voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Is it worth trying to get somebody like George W. Bush or bigwigs in the Republican Party who are not high on Trump to say, I'm voting for Kamala?
You know, I'm anxious to see the reaction when the first time Joe Biden does an event for Kamala, to see how people react. I don't know. I can't guess that. I've got to see it.
But it is an unknown right now.
It's an unknown, yeah.
I think it's very interesting because these Democrats in general, and that there will be places that, I'm sure Kamala will be here in Ohio because of Sherrod Brown, but I don't think we will see Joe Biden here. I don't think, and under other circumstances, I think we would. I think certainly Obama, maybe. And I do think the Clintons, maybe, because it's been some time. But Biden right now, just with everything that went on, I don't know. I really don't know about that.
After a certain point, if you're out of politics for a certain period of time, you become above politics, and that's Obama's great appeal. That's the appeal of the Clintons. So I think yes, that would be a safer bet. Do you think Biden is the worst at this point? But not that he's a bad guy, but he's the worst campaigner for her at this point in certain areas. In certain areas, I would agree, but in other areas, like at the Democratic convention, he's going to, when he presumably gives her nominating speech, which would be probably the best way to show that the party is fully together. He will receive minutes and minutes of applause as he walks out. When he says, hello, my fellow Democrats, that's going to be another several minutes of applause.
Yeah.
Democrats love him. And everyone said in their statements, even calling for him to drop out, we're so grateful for all that he's done for us.
I think the two speeches that night that week of the Democratic convention that will mean the most. I do think they're Joe Biden because he's the one who is the current president passing this torch, and it's his vice president. And I do believe the other is Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's her room. I mean, that's the Democratic room. That's certainly her people.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Obama will give a great speech, and obviously Bill Clinton will give a great speech, and I think Michelle will say something because abortion is on the table. Yeah. But I think the two that are going to be the most quoted and meaningful that week are Hillary and Biden because of the circumstance.
Well, that's where she got her start. She became the first female nominee of a major party at the Democratic convention in Philadelphia. So that's sort of, it's the first major in-person convention since then. So it's sort of a full circle moment. You're passing the torch to another female nominee.
Mary Ellen, do you think it's Biden and Hillary at the convention that will mean the most? Aside from, of course, the presidential nominee.
Yeah, I think Kamala's going to give a terrific speech. Well, it's hard to say. I'm always surprised sometimes at who gives the best speech. I always thought Bill Clinton came across really good with his speeches, but is he going to give a speech?
My understanding is that group, Hillary, Bill, Obama, Michelle, and Biden, are certainly on the agenda right now.
Yeah, I think he's a really good speaker. Yeah.
Another speech I would like to look out for is whoever the vice president's going to be.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
He is going. Yes. It's going to be his introduction to the country. Yeah. And, that's just going to be so important for him and the campaign. I
think if it is Shapiro from Pennsylvania, I think Biden ought to do his. Because Biden's from Pennsylvania.
Right.
And leave.
Yeah.
I don't know who would give Kamala's, but I think that'd be the way to go. Matt, we're going to break. We got a whole other half hour coming up here. But what do you think? Is Hillary, Biden, are those the speeches to watch right now unless something else happens?
I think Hillary's speech for sure is something to watch for, considering she's the woman. And abortion is one of the key issues of the election. So yeah, I think that Hillary's speech is probably going to have a lot of influence.
We're coming back in just a moment with our final 30 minutes. And we're back. Matt Morgan, 40th Treasurer of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow, and the youngest delegate headed to the Democratic Convention in the country, 18-year-old Christian Pearson from right here in Marion, Ohio. The topic is the election. Well, let's start from where this all came from. We've talked with Christian and Mary Ellen about this, but Matt, I don't think we've talked about it. Joe Biden out of the race. Sunday, he says goodbye. He endorses Kamala. She is the nominee within a day and a half. She's raised $100 million plus within 48 hours. What do you make of this transition?
You know, I think it's probably a good thing for the Democrats. I don't think that Joe Biden had all that. He had a lot of support. I think it was waning support due to the poor debate performance. I think it hurt him a lot. The fact that it was so widely televised. I think that Kamala, I mean, she's obviously popular. She raised around $100 million in 48 hours, so she's got a lot of grassroots support there. So she certainly seems to have the influence necessary.
You know, another point. Have the Republicans underestimated this? I think to a certain degree that Republicans are still saying she can't win. This doesn't mean anything.
I think that the Republicans are saying that, but I don't think that the Trump campaign is saying that. I think that the Trump campaign might be saying that openly and in public that, you know, oh, there's no chance she can win. This is no issue. But I think behind closed doors, they're probably shaking in their boots.
Yeah, but do you think that they really? Of course, that's what they're going to say. They want to win. This is a race. This is a campaign. Of course, that's what they're going to say. It's not so much what they're saying. Do you think that that's really what they believe? Because I really don't know how you could at this particular point.
No. I mean, your whole argument against Joe Biden was mentally deficient, old, and feeble. And then, you know, you got rid of Joe Biden. Joe Biden, his campaign stopped. And then you got Kamala Harris, who's not even 60 yet. And then you have running against her as the second oldest president to ever be in office. So I think Trump kind of might have fallen into his own trap there.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking before we went on air earlier, Mary Ellen, that the front page of the USA Today, and again, during Joe Biden's campaign, you never saw things like this. I mean, he wasn't a prosecutor, I guess, but the front page of the USA Today, considered an even-handed newspaper by most people, it's the prosecutor versus the convicted felon.
You know, I kept telling you, she was a prosecutor.
She is.
And he's a felon, you know.
He is.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to believe that you have a person, how does it shape up that way?
Can you imagine that that's what we've got?
Well, what are the odds the only time you'd have a convicted felon, his opponent would be a prosecutor?
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting timing. What did Kamala Harris bring? I mean, even Friday night, Mary Ellen, when we were sitting here, less than 2 days before Joe Biden dropped out, our conversation, if you go back and listen to it, there was a little bit, is he going to do this? When's he going to do this?
Now, we were worried.
Yeah, and we weren't talking about Harris, though. I mean, she was not really in the forefront. But boy, that a day and a half, what a difference a day and a half can make.
Right.
Have you been surprised at her ascension?
Yes, yeah. But I think she did everything right. Yeah.
Once Biden endorsed her, she became the conversation, and that was pretty well that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of Democrats were running scared, and they really wanted some, you know, hope, as President Obama would say. And, you know, when the vice president came to be, oh my goodness, you know, that's someone who we know can deliver our message. She can deliver it to the right crowd. And, you know, every Democrat, and myself included, we were just enamored by her ability to speak, and you know, you just think she's such a great candidate. So why wouldn't you get behind her?
You know, well, it's interesting though, because prior to this, I mean, it's hard to believe now since we know what's happened in the past week. But before that, there was a question of, okay, well, if not Biden, then who?
Well, you know, the fact that the press didn't cover her, we had no idea really what she was saying as she was out campaigning for Biden. And I have a feeling that she improved a lot over that 3.5 years as vice president.
You know, interestingly enough, in her first campaign speech, and I heard this analyzed, which I believe was Monday in Wisconsin, she said things that Joe Biden has not said in a year and a half. I mean, she brought up Project 2025. Biden never brought that up. She brought up abortion heavy. Biden has only brought that up sparingly. She brought up working class. She brought up the convictions of Trump, which I don't think Biden has ever mentioned really outwardly heavy. She did all that in her first speech and just laid it out there.
Well, you talk about the convictions. I think Biden was in the era of Trump and how his attacks on the Department of Justice and the federal judiciary. That's something that Biden, I think, he wanted to steer clear of just because he was the candidate to save us from that. But we're in a different era now with Kamala Harris. And, you know, I just think she has so much energy herself, you know, to get out what the president really couldn't.
Well, I'm thinking now, again, hindsight is 2020, but maybe Biden, because of all this, that he was the one who ran against Trump last time, because age has always been kind of a background issue with him, because he is the sitting president and it's his Justice Department that's going after Trump on a lot of these things. Maybe he wasn't the strongest candidate when you look at it all, and there wasn't any primary, so nobody really knew until the first debate.
Yeah, I would concede that's true. But when Joe Biden on the rally stage, he could still put together a solid rally. He was still, he could still deliver at least the core of the message, even if it didn't have all the attacks on Trump and his policy and things like that. So you can maintain that there will be a stronger candidate anytime you have a president running for re-election. You could make the argument that there was some other Democratic politician in 2012 who was stronger than Obama. I mean, that would be hard because no one came up from the midterms. This time you had a bunch of people come up from the midterms. You could argue, yes, there were other candidates who would have been, much better public speakers, or they had better name recognition because they won in a tough race than the year prior. But it's hard to really top the fact that you're the president of the United States. And I know public speaking is a big part of that when you're running for office, but you have to look at the background and what's been accomplished. And the fact that Biden was could run on that, and he had all of his surrogates, who would spread that message, I think that was really strong.
Matt, what do you make of, we've been hearing it now for months and months and months, two old white guys, we don't want to see this rematch, two oldest candidates to ever run, we're going to go third party, not because we want to vote for a third party, but because we don't like either one of these people. They've both been president at some point in their life. Do you think this is a woman? This is someone who's not in her 70s? This is someone who has never been president? This is someone who doesn't seem to click off those boxes that were all the complaints?
Well, I know a few people who I've talked to about it since Joe Biden ended his campaign, and I think that some people just can't be happy. Like, they'll never be happy.
So it really wasn't about Biden.
I really don't think it was, because I asked them about it, and they're like, it's just as bad as it was before, So I think that people I think that every year there are people who say that these are the worst two candidates we've ever had, and that there needs to be better candidates. But I think you could put up the best candidate the world had ever seen, and people would bash on him.
Do you think that is still out there, that these are the two worst candidates now? I mean, can you say that twice? I mean, if they were the two worst, if Biden and Trump were the two worst, can you really say these are the two worst?
I guess you're just saying that Kamala is worse than Biden at that point, because, you got to level it down somehow.
Aren't we getting redundant?
But
vote for whoever you want, but I think we're getting redundant at some point if we keep saying this over and over.
But, maybe that was an over-exaggeration. I don't know that people say that, but people, they'll be like, politics, something needs to change. They're never happy with the candidates that they got. I don't really know.
Do you think more people are apt to vote for her? I was shocked that in Marion, Ohio, the first day we opened up the telephone lines, one person basically was negative toward Kamala, and boy, there were a lot of people negative toward Biden. There just were.
I've talked to a few people, and I was talking to somebody, and then I had mentioned how he was one of the people who had brought up that just as bad as Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They didn't really want either of them. And then I had brought up, I was like, I mean, a lot of people, like Kamala, because I had mentioned the $100 million she raised in 48 hours. And then they had mentioned that they don't think that that's because they liked Kamala, that's because they didn't like Trump. And I said, by that logic, wouldn't have that money already been to Joe Biden?
Well, at that point, you're just dealing with arguably a diehard supporter of a third party who just abhors the two the two parties.
No,
So-
knowing this man, I think he just has an issue with politics as a whole.
But I had Sam Donaldson on Monday morning, ABC News veteran, and he was also on the morning after the debate as well as Mary Ellen, and he said Biden had to get out, that this was a train wreck for the Democrats, and Sam Donaldson is no fan of Donald Trump's. And when I had him on Monday and we had the discussion about Kamala, what he said I thought was very interesting. He said that in 2020, he said, of course there were people who liked Biden, but by and large, by the time 2020 came, people were pretty much either voting for Trump or they were voting against Trump. And Biden certainly benefited by that, because at that point, people were not satisfied with Trump. And that in this election, it's not really about Harris, that she is just the other candidate. She's not Donald Trump. That he is such a well-known person. We all know what he is at this point. He's been there 3 election cycles. And that was the problem the Democrats were having, was that they were okay with Joe Biden until they felt he couldn't win.
I think anytime you have an election where Donald Trump is the candidate, it's going to be a race to beat him. It's up to the candidate themselves who's running against Trump to make it, here's why you should vote for me, less of, okay, this is why you shouldn't vote for this guy. So that's what the vice president has to do, especially when she has all this attention leading up to the convention, because that's going to be her chance to define herself. So if she can do that, if she can show the country, okay, this is why you should vote for me, this is all I've done, this is all I will do, this is how I sound giving a speech, that's her time to define herself and tell people why they should vote for her and not just against Trump.
Mary Ellen, do you think it comes down to this at some point? The people who love Trump are going to vote for Trump. The people who are strong Democrats are going to vote for whoever the Democratic candidate may be. The independents and the never-Trumpers, that group that's left, or the group that might have stayed home if Joe Biden had run, mm-hmm. is that group, basically do what you have to say to them at this point is, listen, we are better than Trump. Is that the message they need to have?
Well, they need to know why we're better than Trump, and there's a lot of reasons. I talked to my banker the other day. He said Wall Street is with Trump. And you watch the market, and it's in great shape right now. And I thought that was very interesting because, with his deal with giving the tax breaks to the rich and all of that, there's, I guess, 800 rich people, that's what they're saying, there's 800, and all the rest of us are not rich,
So it's only 800?
Yes, 800
Oh.
that falls into that category. And I came out of there thinking, oh, for heaven's sakes. And I've heard some of my friends that have some money say that they're with Trump because of the money situation. So I think that does have an effect, but my goodness, if you look at the reasons they shouldn't be voting for Trump, there's a lot more than that.
Matt, when we started this election cycle, this will also be the first election that you have ever voted in. You came in the beginning and you said, I'm not really liking either one of these guys. At one point, you thought you might vote third party. Does any of this change mean anything to you?
I'll have to do more reading in on Kamala Harris. I've done quite a bit of reading since she's been put up as the candidate. But she sounds just about like Joe Biden to me. Maybe a little more liberal in terms of abortion and a little more moderate in terms of providing weapons to other countries. But it's pretty much just Joe Biden.
So you think there is no difference?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just on the issues I have specifically read about that seems to be the consensus that I've come up to. Now I haven't heard her give any speeches yet. I do need to listen to her give some speeches. I've only listened to Biden's speeches because he was running.
So really, age and none of that stuff was any issue for you.
Oh no.
Okay.
I mean, you could be 102 if you could do the job well. I mean.
So what is
Got it.
what's the issue? What are your issues that you're looking for at this point? Because you're the voter that people want to have. Now you say on Trump, you feel what?
I feel Trump when he was in office, there was a lot of abuse of power. There were tax cuts to the rich that probably shouldn't have happened.
Well, let's put it this way: what are your chances of voting for Trump?
I'm not voting.
Okay, not voting for Trump.
Not voting for Trump.
Okay, so
We're glad about that.
so at this point, do you believe that any of these third-party candidates can win?
I think they have a significantly less of a chance now than they did before.
Have you heard anything from Kennedy? Or I haven't heard a thing.
No, he's been kind of quiet since this whole change.
Have you heard
Well,
something?
there was the big controvery with the leaked phone call of him and Trump
Oh, yes,
after the
yes, I did hear
assassination
about that.
attempt.
Oh, really?
And
He was asking for a job, wasn't he?
yeah, I read some article.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
he turned it down, or the Trump people wouldn't oblige. You know, RFK would drop out, and then he would get some position with the Trump campaign or a Trump administration, and the Trump people turned it down because it would look too much like a quid pro quo. And when the Trump people are talking about turning down someone because of a quid pro quo, when Trump got impeached for a quid pro quo with the president of the
Right.
Ukraine, you have to wonder like that's a pretty bad situation. And then of course there were rumblings that Kennedy's been canceling campaign events recently. He's just gone quiet. You have to wonder if he'll come out and endorse Trump soon.
So you think he would endorse Trump?
Yes.
He really doesn't want to go anywhere for the holidays, does he? Because his family cannot be.
Oh, they're going to kill him.
I mean, if he's already made them very unhappy by running. If he endorses Trump, I mean, he at this point, I think, should probably just change his last name.
Yes, but for a lot of people, it's just sheer power. And if you go with Trump, you've got a pretty good shot of getting some sort of power. But you have to surrender all. You basically have to surrender your liberty.
Do you think
Trump.
Nikki Haley did that? There was a big
Yes.
question of this. Why did she
Yes.
speak at the convention after the assassination attempt?
A lot of people say it was because for the sake of
Unity.
which
Yeah.
that was the only show of unity that I saw. They were going to supposedly unify the country, and they fell far short of that goal.
But do you think she was offered a job?
She was certainly offered some sort of a position in the Trump administration. I don't know that she would want one. They would all seem to be in conflict with her. But this is what I don't understand. Her campaign was on being against, not solely on being against Trump, but she was the sole, she was the only person who sort of had a chance. But fortunately for Trump, there were about 10 other Nikki Haleys, so they all split the vote. And Trump, did well.
Well, but those people, Chris Christie, do you want his endorsement if you're Harris? I heard him say last week on a talk show, it might have been The View,
Yeah.
that he said, I would have never voted for Biden,
Yeah.
but, because they kept trying to press him into saying he would vote for, he said, I'm never going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
But he said, I will leave the top of it blank, but if Harris shows me something, I'm not ruling it out.
I think...
Is it important to get somebody like a Chris Christie to show up and say, listen?
I think if you get a big name from the Republican Party to come out openly and say they're going to vote for Kamala Harris, I think it would do well.
People did that in 2016. He's gone now. Colin Powell did that. George H.W. Bush did that. But are there any W. Bush Republicans left? I mean, does it matter what he says at this point?
That's exactly what the issue would be. Because
Dick Cheney? Is there any Dick Cheney?
I wonder how they're going to vote.
Yeah, the Cheneys. That's an interesting family right now.
I think
the McCains.
I think a lot of people can't take Meghan McCain seriously, so they'll kind of disregard what she says. Kind of the same thing with Dick Cheney. Any major Democrat would be like, we wanted to impeach this guy. We thought he was guilty of war crimes. Those on the progressive side of the party
And
in
he
the
was.
2000s.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, but you gotta at some point you're like, I don't.
Pence. What about Pence? Do you think he?
Before January
He won't
6th,
vote.
I would
You
have
don't think
said.
he'll vote?
No.
I think before January 6th, you would have said absolutely not. He's just this run-of-the-mill conservative who surrendered himself to Trump. I mean, is it true that he endorsed Trump or he wasn't?
I heard that he signed the pledge because he was running for president. at
That
one
is
point.
true. You did have to sign the pledge that you would endorse Trump, but
Nikki Haley. Could she change her mind?
Nikki-
She changes her mind a lot.
Yes.
she
does.
seems to change her mind a
Yes.
lot. And it's all for the illusion of power in this Trump Republican Party. I think that's the issue. And all of these people, they just lack principle. They don't stand on anything. Look at J.D. Vance. Okay, if there was no open Senate seat in Ohio, he would still be on CNN and writing columns in the New York Times about how Trump was a bad person. So it's whenever you wave not even power, but the potential for power in the faces of these people.
But who is the head of the Republican Party, other than Trump, that can get those never-Trumpers to vote for Kamala? It certainly isn't a Democrat.
I would think it would have to be an incumbent office holder.
Who is it though? I mean, John McCain's gone.
It would have to be some
Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney, maybe.
perhaps, but she's when she lost her primary in
Mitt Romney.
Mitt
Yeah,
Romney may
that could
be
be.
the only one left. I was looking for one. He's not running for re-election. He doesn't have to worry about
John Kasich. I saw him on TV the other day.
I think a lot of Ohioans view him very, very negatively. I was not terribly impressed when he spoke at the DNC, but I think Lisa Murkowski would be a good one. She's from Alaska. She's a Republican. She's split with Republicans on, impeachment, on confirming Amy Coney Barrett. That was a big one. She didn't vote for that. Twice in her career has she faced other Republicans in a general election. So Republicans don't really like her anyways, but she always finds a way to win. I've heard rumblings. It would make sense for her to, if the Democrats, were to lose the Senate, for her to become an independent caucus with the Democrats. So I think she would be a good voice.
Are the Democrats in good shape in the House and Senate now, races, with Harris at the top of the ticket, Mary Ellen?
I think much better, yes. Yeah.
What do you think, Matt? The House and the Senate were in dire straits. That's what Pelosi and people like Sherrod Brown and Schumer were on Biden to get out of this race. That's why I don't think we're going to see Biden campaigning in a lot of stops where people are up for re-election.
Well, I think typically the stronger the top of the ticket, the stronger the rest of the ticket performs. I think that there's a lot more people who support Kamala now due to the fact that Biden has, due to the poor debate performance, I think that pretty good and well hurt him.
Just by the way, there is a lot of this going around, and it sounds so silly to say this, but somebody sent me a message. There were a few people, and again, it hasn't happened yet, but does Taylor Swift hold the key to this election?
I think
Honest to goodness.
you have
Where
when
is she?
She hasn't said anything
Oh,
yet, and I think it's
okay.
very interesting that she did not endorse Biden, but she has endorsed political candidates, and they tend to be more liberal. And boy, it does matter when she does that. And now it's a woman. It's abortion year. Could she put Kamala over the top?
Of course she could. And
Really?
would
Would that mean something to you? I mean, obviously we know where you're going, but would it mean something to you? Would your friends care?
Yes, that would mean something to
See that?
that would mean a lot to a lot of young people.
Isn't that interesting?
Because
That's terrible.
that would form a
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
that would form a conversation that a lot of young people would never have. They would never talk about politics, but if Taylor Swift on her Instagram story
Yes.
posts a picture of her holding a batch of Kamala Harris cookies like she did in 2020 for Joe Biden, I would be like, oh my gosh, she supports her. What can we do to help her? Why don't we register to vote? She's a big proponent of voter registration. At least that's what, according to her social media, is. So anytime she posts something about registering to vote, there's you can tell there's an uptick in voter registration across the country.
What if they tried to get her at the Democratic convention?
I think if she performed at the Democratic convention, it would drive so many people insane, and it would make so many people close to me really jealous that I would be there to see it. But I'm not sure that would happen. I'm sure that would have to be like the best kept secret besides Biden's
I think you'd want to keep it a
resignation.
secret, yeah.
But if she did that, then the election would be over. But I don't think she
I'm
would.
telling you. The Taylor Swift factor is fascinating to me. I'm so fascinated by her, I just can't even...
Well, let me tell you, I saw Kevin Costner at 2 conventions, so I know where he stands.
So we know where he votes.
Right.
George Clooney, does he need to come out at this convention and repent what he did?
No, I don't know.
Who are this? I mean, clearly a lot of celebrities are Democrat. They show up at these fundraisers.
Yeah.
Well, and they raise a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so I assume some of them will be at the convention.
You have to have ones that, I guess you have to ask a celebrity to taint their image, because a lot of celebrities, you know where they stand
Trump had Hulk Hogan.
politically. Exactly. Like, there will be people who didn't know he was a conservative, and they saw that speech and like, I don't like him anymore.
I'm telling you, I thought the same thing. I thought, what is Hulk Hogan doing at this point in his
Did
career?
you?
I did. I thought this man has been so even keel his entire career that you didn't know where he stood. And boy, I bet he alienated half his people that night.
I didn't care. I mean,
No.
I saw it and I didn't care a bit about what he felt.
No, but
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that on Trump night, on their big night, his introductions came from celebrity people. It was Hulk Hogan, it was the head of the UFC, Dana White. It wasn't politicians. I thought that was interesting, and I thought, will the Democrats try that because of the non-divisive factor? Will they try to get somebody like Hulk Hogan, who is well known, who's never made their political stance known, to come out and you want a big crowd?
Well, that's sort of Trump's brand. He's always been a celebrity. That's who he feels most comfortable with. I would imagine if we're, throwing up hypotheticals of who would introduce the vice president on the last night of the convention, you would get a string of just regular people with different stories that sort of, build the base of what is the Democratic Party. Like, single parents, firefighters, just union members, really young people, just people like that would be a very good. I would just think that would be a very good introduction for the vice president, rather than have a bunch of celebrities or politicians.
Well, you remember Barbara Streisand was at one of the conventions?
Oh, yes,
She
yes.
sang?
Heavy
Yeah.
duty Democrat. And
Yeah, we use them.
yeah. Well, that's what I wonder. I would think in this celebrity-driven culture we live in, I certainly don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, George Clooney, when he wrote that op-ed, that was a major story that he had said that he didn't think Biden was up to it anymore. The George Clooney story got as much attention as just about any other person who was in politics. And I thought, boy, that's interesting. Do you think he needs to repent?
I think he needs to repent. I will say this about celebrities at the Democratic convention. If you can find celebrities that are already sort of known that they're Democrats, who aren't, hated by a lot of people, like a lot of the talk show hosts are just so despised by a lot of people on the right. There's no point in bringing them out to the convention. But if you can find, a comedian or someone who a lot of people like, I'm not sure if Dave Chappelle's a Democrat, but someone like a Dave Chappelle, who a lot of people think, is funny, sort of edgy, you don't really know where they stand, but they, said things about this in the past. Someone like that, if you get someone like that on a big night at the convention, I think you would, have a lot of people spark a conversation that would help us.
Got to have celebrities. With 1 minute left to go, Matt, who should be a big speaker at the convention? Who's the celebrity you want?
I'm not all for the celebrity endorsement personally. I don't think celebrities know anything about politics, but I think Taylor Swift would probably be the best option, even though I bash on Taylor Swift a lot.
Oh, she would sway people.
See, everybody seems to love Taylor Swift, so you put Taylor Swift there, I think that does it.
Yeah.
I think Steve Colbert could do it.
I think he'd be very
Yeah.
popular there, certainly.
I think so.
All right. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. Matt Morgan and Mary Ellen Withrow, always is great to have here, 40th President of the United States, and Christian Pearson, again, the youngest delegate headed to the Democratic Convention in Chicago in August. What a pleasure it's been. For this episode of Scott Spears Now, we're heading for the dugout.